Welcome back to Lessons in Property with me, Steve Hand. So if you're new to our channel, welcome. I'm Steve. I'm Steve. And if you're new here, welcome. I'm Steve. So if your background has nothing to do with property and construction, fear not. This guest, Doug Reid, is from the oil and gas industry, and Doug is already on with some mid-sized projects. So it's fascinating to talk with Doug about his latest project, which is near Aberdeen University, and how he's about to, hopefully, build out of the ground in the land around this property. This just shows that with the right education, you can be really successful in property. Enjoy. Hi, Doug.
Hi, Steve. Hi, Steve. How are you?
I'm very well, and you?
Good. Yeah, great. Thanks. Great. Really
And
good.
just to introduce you, Doug, we've known each other for a year or two.
About a year. About a year, I think.
About a
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
Time's a funny one, isn't it? Because we meet up every now and again, don't we? Usually each quarter, and we see each other on Zoom sometimes, and you speak to each other, and yeah, it's a bit of an abstract concept sometimes. So you don't always know how long, but we've come to know each other because we're in the same property network, and Paul McFadden Wealth. And there's a lot of like-minded people in a group like this. You know, some people have come from business anyway previously. Other people have been in construction or property, but it brings together people with a collective mindset, if you like, a growth mindset that want to get into property or at least accelerate in property. And of course, you've not just been in property for a year or so, because you've had a successful career in what you did previously, and you've acquired property as you go along, as people do when they've got spare cash. So do you want to tell us a little bit about your background and then how you've got into property?
Sure. Yeah, my background was in the oil and gas industry. I had a 35-year career in oil and gas. Finance was my background, and then after I retired, I was kind of looking for something to do. And bear in mind, this is back in 2014, when the Bank of England base rate was about 1% or something like that. I had a bit of cash, and I thought, well, looking around, and I thought, I'm going to start to invest in some property. But at that point, it was really just more as a property was an alternate asset class for me, really. It wasn't with the intention of building a property business.
Yeah.
I bought my first flat back in 2014. And, looking back on it now, I may be talking a little while about the value of education and investing in yourself and building your own knowledge. But, I had what knowledge I had back then, which was quite good from an oil and gas professional's point of view, but not necessarily from a property investor's point of view.
Yes, yeah.
Bought my first flat in Aberdeen, £125,000, remember it well, paid for it all in cash. And bought that, rented it out, getting £700 a month return on the flat, managed it myself, and everything was going sort of swimmingly well. So I thought, okay, I'll buy another one. And anyway, let me just fast forward. I'll be here all day talking about all that. So I built up a reasonable sized portfolio over a period of years. There came a point in that 10-year period where I thought, yeah, actually, I am going to turn this into a business, and I'm going to go for it and see just where we can take it. Go back to probably the beginning of last year. I built up this portfolio of 15 properties, mostly in Aberdeen, where I live, but also elsewhere. I've got places in Leeds, Wolverhampton, and Dundee, and I've also got a place in Spain. And actually, it's quite interesting because, when you meet another property investor, you inevitably get into this conversation of what size is your portfolio. Yes, it's better than better than another conversation you could have. But what size is your portfolio? And people measure the portfolio often in terms of the number of units, which I think is quite interesting. Because 8 of my properties are HMOs. So a 1-bedroom flat is one property. A 6-bedroom HMO is also one property, but very different in terms of scale, cash flow, value, and so on. So I think actually a far better metric of a portfolio is the number of bedrooms.
I was just going to say that. That is a good,
exactly. So my portfolio was up at 50 bedrooms. which
Mm.
was a decent sized portfolio. However, I think, when I look back on it now, and only really in the last year. So in March of last year, I signed up. I'd been listening to the podcasts for about a year or so. Guys like Simon Zucci, Frank Flegg, these kind of guys. Basically, anything I could consume for nothing. I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
listening to the content, and then eventually I thought, you know what? I need to get myself kind of educated in how
Mm.
to do property properly. So last March, I saw on Facebook that Paul McFadden was coming up to Aberdeen to do a 2-day, he calls it his Jumpstart program,
Mm.
which is his way, I guess, of getting people into the Paul McFadden education system.
Yeah, yeah. It's a
Um,
bit of a springboard, isn't it, into the
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And even those 2 days just really opened my eyes
Mm.
to what I'd been doing. I guess I could say wrong, certainly how I could have managed my investment an awful lot better over the previous
Yeah,
10 years and made my money go an awful lot further, which is probably
yeah.
the key point. So as a result of that, I signed up with Paul's they call it his protege program.
Mm.
And it was July of last year. In fact, I think that was when we first met, actually, Steve. You came up
Wow.
to
July, right?
protege.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And I really started to understand how to do property properly.
Mm.
So to give you an example of that, if I rewind a few years, my typical property acquisition process was to go out, find a property that would work well as let's say, work well as an HMO.
Mm.
I'd speak to my broker. He would arrange a buy-to-let mortgage. So I would get loan to value 75%. So I'm putting 25% in of the purchase price of my own
Yeah,
money.
yeah,
Plus, by the time I paid ADS and legals and stuff like that, then 25 was probably closer to 30%. So
yeah,
every purchase I did, there was 30% of my cash, my available resources
yeah.
going into the purchase. And you could be the wealthiest person in the world, but if you follow that model, then you're going to run out of cash eventually.
Yeah. You're just limited, aren't you? You're
Yeah,
limiting what you can do.
absolutely, absolutely. So it wouldn't be an overstatement to say it was a revelation what I learned going through the education system with Paul and the guys at PMW. So as a result of that, I feel like I know how to make my money go an awful lot better.
Mhm.
Um, I also learned a couple of things along the way, particularly around bridging finance.
Yeah.
So when I was going to say growing up, but not so much growing up, but in my 30s and 40s and so
When
on.
you, yeah,
But bridging finance always had quite negative connotations to me.
yeah.
The typical scenario would be somebody was trying to move house. They
Hmm.
would go on the look, find a house they wanted to buy. Particularly in Scotland, back in the
Yeah.
day, it's changed a little bit now. You can put a few more caveats in your offer, but certainly back in the day in Scotland, when you made a verbal offer for a property and that was accepted, you'd formed a contract at that point. So you
Yeah.
were on the hook to buy that house.
Yeah.
And back in the day, it was often, particularly in the big cities like Glasgow and Edinburgh, where it was comparatively easy to sell houses. People
Mhm.
would often go out looking for a house first and then worry about selling their house after,
Yeah.
when they were contractually bound to buy this house. 9 times out of 10, it would work out fine for them and they would sell the house quite quickly, but sometimes it didn't.
Yeah.
And oh my gosh, what am I going to do? I'm going to have to get a bridging loan. One of
Mm.
these very expensive products to tide me
Mm.
over while I'm trying to sell my house. So bridging finance always had quite negative connotations to me
Mm.
as a result of that. And it wasn't until I started to be educated in the use that you can make of bridging finance to realize actually for a property investor, it's not a negative thing at all. It's an enabler
Yes.
to do deals. And I was talking to somebody the other day. We've been me and my business partner. We've been pretty active in the start of this year. We've got 6 transactions on the go at the moment.
Mm.
All of them involve in bridge and finance,
Yeah.
and quite a few of them, we just wouldn't be able to have done if we didn't have
Oh,
access to a bridging
absolutely.
product.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's massively important. I'm going to say that obviously, but I've taken out a bridge. My first bridge was 3 to 4 years ago, so I was quite late to the party, if you like. Started out in 2000 in the mortgage world, and naturally in this game, any spare cash you've got, you put into property rather than equities. So the portfolio started in 2001, but it was a slow growth, like you say, Doug, where you're putting down what you save. Any growth in the market, you might refinance, buy another one, but you're not really taking on board and embracing leverage like you could do. So when people decide and make that leap to take forward with bridging finance or development finance, what they're doing there is that the lending potentially against the value of an asset. And of course, sometimes in this world, we get things less than the value. So you can lend against the value of an asset, and then your money in is minimized. And that's one of the keys, at least, to or to success in property. It's leverage, because we've all only got so much to play with of our own money. So it's leveraging, first of all, what financial tools have we got, whether it's bridging, development finance, etc. And maybe blend that with investors' money as well at times, because certainly with larger projects, it's hard to tackle those on our own financially. So we bring in other investors. But I think when we use the tools of bridging, and you can lend as well against the value, especially if you're getting it for less, add your value to it, do your refurb, and then refinance out. It's a fairly common strategy, the BRRR strategy. But then ideally pull all your money out straight away because you've increased the value, or at least inside a year or two, and then you can go again onto the next one. And that's just one of the many strategies that we can do. That there's assisted sales that a lot of people don't know about, where you don't need to change legal ownership, and that there's various other things that, depending on someone's appetite. And I guess that's the thing, Doug. It's like we've got to ask ourselves, what do I want to do? Why am I doing this? What's my why? Not just to copy another model or copy somebody else. There's many facets, isn't there, to this world in property?
Absolutely, absolutely. So firstly, let me say it makes me feel a little bit better that you only did your first bridge 3 years ago. So somebody as expert as you are in property, it's only 3 years ago. So it makes me feel a little
Yeah.
bit better having looked back on my 10 years of sticking my own money into investments. But yeah, no, for example, today, literally this morning, I was out we've got a refurb project going on in a little village out in Aberdeenshire, about 30 miles from Aberdeen City. I came to Express for that. We got a bridge. So when I was listening to Simon Zucci and these kind of guys saying you can do deals without putting any of your own money in, I'm listening to this thinking, well, I'm putting 30% of my own money into every deal. There was
Yeah.
an element of, shall we say, skepticism
Yeah.
attached to what I was hearing. In Scotland, you would say, "Aye, right,"
Yeah.
But there was a degree of skepticism until I thought, actually, this we can do this. And this property, it was a small 2-bedroom end of terrace cottage in a little village called Lumfannon in Aberdeenshire, valued at £115,000. I got it at auction at 78, and it was trashed. It was a bank repossession,
Yeah.
and the place was trashed. But a lot of it was superficial. You put
Yeah.
in a new kitchen. There was a bit of damp. We replaced the bathroom. There was a hole in the wall. Would you believe the woman that lived in it had a relationship with the bloke next door? So rather than going out of her back door and in his back door, they decided to knock a hole in the wall
Honestly.
so they could go and visit each other at
Great.
whatever time of the night. So yeah, we fixed all that. So with a combination of bridging finance and bringing on a private investor, I didn't put a penny of my own money into that project. And
Yeah.
here we are today. I was going out today just because that's it finished. It's going on the market on Friday.
Yeah.
And we'll sell that. I'll make some money, pay my investor back, pay my bridging loan. And, it's not even a rinse and repeat, because it's not like you're using one pot of your own money
Yeah.
to do it, and then you pull that money out and then go somewhere else and
Yeah.
rinse and repeat, and so on and so on. This was literally none of my own money went into it. I wouldn't have believed a year ago that was possible.
No, it is, and still for a lot of people that will be watching this, they're like, no, surely I've got to put some money in. I've got to have some skin in the game. And with
Yeah.
certain lenders, you do. They want, even if you get an investor money as part of the deposit, they still want the main person, the developer, to put some of their own money in, because they call it hurt money.
Yeah.
But not all lenders are like that. If you're inventive enough and creative enough, and you network, and you've got people in your world that are happy to invest in you, use their funds. You're doing the graft craft, if you like, or you're the conductor of the orchestra. They're just the money person. And then you're making the deal happen. They'll
Yeah,
quite happily take 5, 10, 15% return, whatever it may be, you know?
absolutely, absolutely. And that, that raises an interesting point as well. Again, in terms of my journey, private investment. So I was right. I consider myself to be a reasonably smart individual. I was the finance director of an oil and gas company when I retired. But I think a lot of people suffer from a touch of imposter syndrome.
Mm,
When you think, really, will people really have faith in me? And I was kind of like that a little while ago in
yeah,
terms of attracting private investment. It was
yeah,
almost like, why would people want to come and invest in my projects? What's
yeah,
special about me type thing.
yeah.
However, when I thought about it, I thought, no, actually, we've got a credible proposition to put out to people.
Mhm,
We offer them a good return on their
yeah.
investment. It's fairly, it's fairly safe in terms of where they're investing their money. I've kind of gone out and talked to had a lot of conversations with a lot of people about investment, and there's now got a lot of people on board,
Oh, absolutely.
which
Well,
is
straight
yeah.
away, Doug, and this isn't for anyone that's not been in finance or not had buy-to-lets before. This isn't distancing them from this, what I'm about to say. But when you've had a career in finance, so straight away, as somebody that does invest in other people's projects, I would look at that. That's a tick in the box for me. Career in finance, so they understand numbers, they understand maths, because that's part of the puzzle. And then the second thing is they've had property before, they've been through that process themselves before, so they've got a level of understanding about property. There's many other things that you can look at, but two things straight away I would think this guy has a reasonable grasp on this world. Now, if they're in construction, that's another one because somebody's got to do the donkey work and build the thing out. So they've
Yeah.
got an idea then of costings of a refurb or a project. So there's various things that investors look at. So no, I wouldn't discount that at all. I would be looking at transferable skills.
Yeah, yeah, no. Well, it seems to be working.
Mm.
The other thing that we offer that some people have found attractive through through my network, obviously you meet a lot of people who are engaged in property. Some of them extremely experienced, some of them just starting off their journey. And I think for people just starting off, it can be a little bit daunting.
Mm.
Right, I've had all the education and I know in theory how it works, but I'm really ready to make that leap and make my first investment.
Yeah,
What we offer to people that has seems to have proved quite attractive is almost like a kind of invest and learn type concept, a
yeah,
knowledge transfer type concept. So, I obviously I can't talk about individuals, but I've got some investors who have said to me, look, I want to get involved in my own deal, but I just don't feel quite ready to do that at this stage.
yeah, yeah,
Um, how about if I invest with you and you kind of take me along the process? I
yeah.
mean, we're not talking about picking the color of the paint or anything like that, but just in terms of, this is where we are in the process.
What's the program? Yeah, what's the journey of the program?
Exactly, exactly. And the intent behind that is that the come the end of the process, that investor thinks, well, actually, that wasn't too hard.
Yeah,
I think I've got I've got a grasp of that, and it gives them the intention is to give them the confidence to
hmm,
then go and do the next project themselves.
yes, yeah.
Yeah, so we do that, and that seems to have landed quite well with a number of people.
Yeah, no, absolutely, because they understand the stages then involved, don't they? And the hurdles that you've got to jump over. And if there's a challenge, which there always is in property, sometimes it's major, sometimes it's minor, then they feel that they can embrace the challenges when they come about. So with the projects that you've got, I know we've chatted before, Doug, about you've got the one that's in Aberdeen, and you've got within the garden or the grounds that there might be a possibility there for a project. Do you want to chat us through that one?
Absolutely, absolutely. 3 years ago now, I bought a portfolio of properties it was actually from the estate of a lady who passed away. Her family had inherited the properties that she ran as a business, and they just didn't want anything to do with it. They just wanted to monetize the assets and move on with their lives. So I bought this portfolio of 7 properties, and one of them was it was a 6-bedroom HMO on one of the main thoroughfares in Aberdeen very, very close to Aberdeen University. When I
Yeah.
say close, if you had a strong left arm, I don't know if you don't know if you're a cricketer or not, but if you had a strong left arm, you could throw a stone from the front door of the HMO into the playing fields of Aberdeen University. At
Oh
that
wow.
point.
So I class that as being a golfer as which sort of wedge am I going to use? Is it a
Ah,
lob wedge?
right,
Is it a
yeah.
pitching wedge?
Probably a sand wedge. A sand
Okay.
wedge.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, pretty close, pretty close.
Okay. All right.
So we bought that, but it had a massive bit of land at the back. So the first job was to do a refurbishment on the HMO itself, which we did, and it turned out really nice. Really proud of that project. But it was always at the back of my mind, we must be able to do something with this land.
Hmm.
So through my letting agent, I hooked up with a local architect, and we went through a few iterations of what we could maybe do, but we've landed on effectively as a sort of accommodation block, which is bolted on to the existing building and joined via a corridor.
Right.
The reason for that is because in the Aberdeen planning world, it's easier to get planning permission for something that's kind of almost regarded as an extension than it would be a
Ah,
new
yeah.
build. So
Yeah.
this was the architect's sort of creative thinking going.
Okay.
So we've got a planning application in right now for it's a 21, effectively a maisonette, a building with 21 maisonettes in it. So it's not just rooms, it's self-contained rooms, with
Ah,
a
yeah.
room, ensuite shower room, and cooking facilities, all
What's
in.
so like a studio apartment or a one
Yes,
bed
yeah,
apartment or that?
very
Yeah.
much so. Yeah, yeah. And the reason for that is it's aimed very much at the student market.
Hmm.
But Aberdeen University and Robert Gordon's University, which is the other university in Aberdeen, like most universities in the UK now, are very much dependent on international students to keep
Yeah.
the commercial model going. People forget that as well as being seats of learning, universities are also commercial organisations,
Oh, yeah,
and
absolutely.
they need fees coming in. So there's a lot of international students, particularly I would say, and without generalising too much here, but particularly students coming in from Asia.
Yeah.
With different religions, for example, they're quite
Yeah.
particular about sharing kitchens
Yeah.
because they don't know what products, for example, pork products, have they been prepared
Yeah.
there, which could be quite offensive to somebody. So having their own self-contained room is actually quite appealing
Yeah.
to a lot of students. So we're going through the planning process now.
Mhm.
It's pretty slow, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
And the planning officer has actually asked for a little bit of an extension to the consultation period. But so I'm hopeful that we get through that. This will be a whole new step for me because we're into development here
Yeah.
rather than just buying, refurbing, and using them as buy-to-lets or
It's
self.
next level stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah, and I think they always say if you're not a little bit nervous, then you're not trying hard enough. Well,
Yeah.
I'm certainly a little bit nervous about it.
Yeah, that's good. Good sign.
So that tells me I'm pushing my boundaries a
Mhm.
little bit. And so I basically set aside the whole of this year to get planning in place, to get my financing plan in place. I've got a rough
Yeah.
idea in my head what it might look like
Yeah.
already, but to get financing in place and also to get my contracting strategy in place,
Yeah.
i.e. get procurement process, work out who's going to build this thing, get the
Yeah.
contract in place with a hope that start of 2026, we actually
Mhm.
start to put a spade in the ground.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, development finance lenders on that, they love to know people have thought through the exit or exit strategies. And having the universities there, the two universities, with if we can demonstrate to them sufficient demand for the end product, then it takes a level of stress away from the development finance lender.
Yeah, well, a very good point, and it was a surveyor actually that pointed this out to me. Because I approached them initially to say, what kind of valuation do you think this thing will have when it's built? And he said, well, some of it depends on how you've not done the build, but how you've constructed it from a legal framework. So
Hmm.
what he was getting at from that point of view is if it was just a 21 room maisonette block on a single title,
Hmm.
then as he described on it, that's pretty niche.
Yeah.
meaning that if something were to go wrong with it and the lender was to repossess the building, well, there's not going to be a huge queue of people looking to
No.
buy a 21 bed. However, if you split the titles up, it's over three floors.
Right.
However, if you split the titles up, then what you've got, although it's encased within the four walls, you've
Mhm.
actually got three 7 bedroom
Yeah.
entities there.
Yes.
So a 7 bedroom entity is a lot more attractive
Hmm.
to an investor than a
Yeah.
21 bed.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you'll know this better than I do, Steve. You know what a valuer is valuing there is not the bricks and mortar. It's
Hmm.
it's the business really.
Yeah. Yeah. It becomes a business,
And
doesn't it, with an entity like that?
yeah, so it'd be an awful lot easier to sell three 7 bedroom maisonette blocks than it would be one 21 bed. So
Yeah.
there's some work. That's what I mean, about getting both the finance, I suppose I should have said the finance and the legal strategy in place
Yeah.
during the course of this year.
Yeah, no, it's key that because not everyone realizes this, but there's various methods of valuation because you've got trading valuations, commercial valuations, bricks and mortar. But sometimes with commercial valuations, lenders will use the 180-day vacant possession figure, which is the amount of time it takes to sell that asset. If the crap hits the fan, if it takes 180 days,
Yeah.
that's the value we put on it.
Mhm.
And that might be circa 85% of the market valuation. But there's also a 90-day valuation. So you can imagine if they've got to sell it within 90 days, it's going to be less. And I think that the tougher the asset is to sell on to a group of people, then there's more likelihood they will go with a 90-day valuation than a 180-day valuation.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
think by dividing it into three separate properties, if you like, 7 beds each, and it brings in a wider audience, we're just increasing the chances of it being valued at that higher figure.
Yeah, yeah. No, that was exactly his advice, which I thought was great, great input
Mm.
from them. And that's fundamentally changed the way we'll
Oh,
do
yeah,
it from a
because you're beginning with
legal
the end in
study.
mind, aren't you? It's like, well, let's
Yeah.
look at this now and let's configure it in this manner. And then
Mhm.
it's still attractive to the same group of people as tenants because it doesn't really matter, I guess, whether it's 24 separate units
No,
or seven threes,
no,
same
no.
thing.
The reality is it will be the same letting agent that manages the whole block.
Yeah,
You'd be kind of daft if I ended up wanting to break it up and sell one of the floors, for example. You'd be kind of daft to get another letting agent in to do that. You would want the
yeah,
same letting agent to handle the thing. So from a day-to-day living point of view, management point of view, it won't make hardly any difference at all. Maybe you have to split up actually you would have three separate meters on each floor and stuff like that. So actually
yeah,
in terms of day-to-day living, it wouldn't make the slightest difference, and certainly the occupants wouldn't feel any difference to it. It's just a different legal structure for
yeah.
the development.
So when you're on with bigger things like this, do you still are you still entertaining the smaller flips if they come on your radar? Is that or does it change your strategy with the more, let's just say, the more junior type projects?
Right. So in April of this year, I'm going to be 65. And as my partner keeps telling me, you're supposed to be winding down a little bit. Um, and I'm not, I'm not, nor do I don't know if she'll watch this or not, but nor do I particularly want to. But I've also got to be a little bit possessive, if that's the right word, of my own time.
Yeah,
Not be a busy fool, if you like.
yeah, yeah.
Running around, and it's great at different parts of your property journey. It's great to be able to flip a property and make 25,000 pounds on it.
Mhm.
And a lot of people do that, and good luck to them. But I'm kind of getting to a point now where, because I'm looking at bigger projects,
Yeah,
I could still do these kind of flips, but
yeah.
is that the best use of my time?
It's not going to move the needle, is it? It's not.
No, no.
Yeah, and you're very much right. I can say this being 50 this year, and I'm a bit younger, but you're conscious of your time because that's one thing we've all only got the same amount of.
Yeah,
You can get more money, you can make more money, you can't make more time. So we have to be very discerning, if you like, with our
yeah,
time.
yeah. I will just add to that point though. I said that as I started to get involved with Paul McFadden's tribe, as he calls it, I've met a lot of good people.
Mm,
To the extent that I now have a business partner who has come from the tribe,
yeah,
and there's something about having worked pretty much solo for 10 years
Yeah.
on property. To have a business partner has been a game changer
Yeah.
for me. Um, and so you sort of think, well, why is that? Because it's just someone. There's something about accountability to each other.
Yeah.
Always showing up for work every day, bringing your A game.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of psychology there, I guess. If I had an easy day today, what's he going to think of me? You haven't done
Yeah.
that. You
Yeah.
haven't done that. There's maybe even I don't know if this is entirely true, but there's maybe even a bit of kind of alpha male thing there as well. Um,
Yeah.
but no, I mean, I think I mentioned at the start, we're here we are on the 19th of February, and we've got 6 transactions on the go
Mm.
just from the start of the year. Now,
Yeah, which is
would I
phenomenal.
have achieved that on my own? Absolutely not.
This is the thing. We do have to be humble, don't we, and say, well, okay, my skill set is this, and you can't have a skill set that ticks all the boxes.
Yeah,
So, and it's good to choose somebody that has a different skill set. There might be some overlap, but yeah, you
yeah.
can achieve a lot more collectively. It's more than the sum of its parts, isn't it? If you've got the right person.
Absolutely. And our skills, I would say, are really, really complementary. So,
Mm.
my background is finance, and a bit of legal as well, around the property business. My partner is very much from a construction background.
Yeah,
Um, Great at going out and finding deals as well.
yeah,
So, we've got absolutely complementary skills,
yeah, very
think,
much
which
so.
is which is absolutely, in my world, the
Mm.
ideal combination for a partnership.
Yeah, yeah, no, no, definitely. And I sense that you like cricket, but what do you like to do outside of property? What's your hobbies and interests?
I am a very, very keen road cyclist.
Oh, yes, I
Um,
think I've seen that before
yeah,
myself.
yeah. Although I
Yep.
will say that one thing that I suffered this year actually is my. I mean, I was pretty serious. I had to train 6 days a week for the
Wow.
for the last 4 years. I'm a member of a local club, and in the summer we have an evening time trial league. So
Right.
for those that don't know cycling, time trialing is called the Race of Truth.
Oh,
So
Mark
when
Cavendish.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. When you watch the Tour de France and things like that, then it's
Mm.
very tactical, and
Yeah,
people shelter in behind other cyclists in the peloton and then just make their bolt at the end type thing.
yeah.
Well, you can't do that in the time trial because you're just out there on the road on
Mm.
your own. So it's a tough gig. And for the last 3 out of the last 4 years, I've been the over 60s club champion
Oh, fair play
in the
to
road
you.
section of that. So fairly serious when it comes to road cycling. I'm also so I come from, although I live in Aberdeen, I come from Edinburgh. Uh,
Yeah. Oh, I remember you saying. Yeah.
but I was going to say there's 2 football teams in Edinburgh. Actually, there's only one, Hibs. So I'm a season ticket holder at Easter Road, the Hibs ground. So I'm down there, well, pretty much every game actually. I'm
Right.
quite fanatical about
Okay.
watching the high bees. So I do that. Yeah. I've got my kids are kind of grown up now. My son's 27.
Yeah.
I can see him becoming, well, he is already active in the business, and I
Yeah.
can see him probably stepping in at some point in the future full time into
Yeah.
the business.
What
And
role's
that,
your son in?
sorry.
What role does your son play within the club?
He's kind of learning the ropes at the moment, so I involve him in a lot of stuff. Ultimately, I'd like him to come in as a sort of, like, in corporate terms, I guess you would call it the chief operating officer.
Yeah.
So my role will be kind of chief exec and more about business development. And by that, I mean, finding deals, finding investors and so on. I think that's probably the best use of my time.
Yeah.
And Kieran, my son, is handling day-to-day operations.
Yeah.
So, we sit down now. Again, I guess this is probably throwback to my corporate days. We sit down and have a formal business performance review every month, him and I,
Right.
where we go through basically all aspects of the business and where
Yeah.
we are with them, what are the issues, what's going well, what's not,
Mm.
how are we going to fix them.
Brilliant.
So he's picking up that knowledge
Yeah.
over time.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
that's invaluable.
so yeah, no, absolutely. And then I've got a daughter who will be 24 next month.
Yeah.
She started to help out in the marketing of
Yeah.
the business. My business, by the way, I should throw in, is called Pantone 300 Properties.
Ah,
And
yes.
Pantone 300 Trading. If I've got time, I'll tell you a little bit about why it's called what it is. But the thing, so one of the things I get the biggest buzz out of, and what I do, I don't actually take any money out of the company whatsoever. I'm lucky enough to have grown up in the days where we had a defined benefit pension. You know,
Ah, gilt edged.
these pensions that killed the pension industry when people realised that nobody could actually afford them. So I've got a pension that I live off, you know, quite comfortably. So I don't have a need to take any money out of my company. All the profits we make just get reinvested back
Yeah.
into the business.
Mm.
And where I get the biggest buzz is, so I'm not doing this for personal gratification or benefit, but who will benefit from it? It's a legacy business that my kids will inherit.
Yeah.
So you know, when I pass on, or when I get to a point where I don't want to do this anymore, then the
Mm.
idea is that they will have built up the expertise and will
Yeah.
be able to take the company forward. And I'm sure they probably do a better job than I have done, you know, but at least we've put solid foundations in place for them. So just that whole legacy thing really
Oh,
gives me a
that gives you
buzz.
drive, doesn't it, for sure?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Because you have a sense of obligation, don't you, and responsibility, and you think that it's not self, it's completely selfless. You don't need to do it for the income. It's not to enhance your standard of living or anything like that.
Yeah,
It's just to make sure that they're looked after properly, and good that they're into it as well. It's
yes,
I'm sure that they'll who wouldn't be though with property. It's not something that's just going to go out of fashion next month or next year.
absolutely.
It's always here to stay, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So you know, it's getting them up the learning curve so that they feel they have the knowledge and they have the confidence to say,
Yeah.
actually, I can do this. The challenge is going to be for me to stop looking over their shoulder. I'm sure, you know, as the former business owner when they take
Yeah.
it on, you know, I'm sure they'll find some role for me far away from the business. Leave us
Yeah.
alone, Dad. We know what we're doing.
Pat you off to Mallorca with your bike, maybe.
Yeah,
And
yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, that'd be great. I'd be happy with that.
no, Doug, that's been great. I'm just conscious of time because we only last for so long on these
Yeah, gosh,
series. But
it's flown past.
yeah, no, I mean, I could talk for ages with you. It's been brilliant. Thank you very much for coming on. Anything else that you'd like to share before we go?
Have we got time to just tell my little story? I've told you this story before about
Pantone 300,
Pantone
yes.
300.
Mm,
Yeah, so I've got two companies. I've got Pantone 300 Properties and Pantone 300 Trading. And in
mhm.
fact, the best one to look at in terms of websites, if anybody's interested in finding out a little bit more about us, Pantone300trading.com is our sort of most active website. But where did the name come from? So my dad, who on the 3rd of March, actually, he's passed away now, 3rd of March, he would have been 100. But for years he had a thing, which I didn't know about actually, but the national flag, the white cross on the blue background, national flag of Scotland, the Saltire as it's called, um, it was the only flag in the world whose colour was not prescribed in law. So I
Which is
can't remember what the
unbelievable, isn't it?
actual
When you think, and what at what point was this? What era are we
well,
talking?
well, this was forever until my dad took up his campaign that I'm just going to tell you
Mm,
about. So, you know, you would go to Murrayfield or you would go to Hampden or something like that. You'd see a saltire being flown with a dark blue background. You'd see another one two rows along with a light blue
yeah,
background. So there was no standardization, and you know you're probably never going to get away from that at public events. But certainly there was the same on government buildings as well. It would
yeah,
vary. So my dad had a thing about this. So, you know, for example, if you take the Italian flag, I'll make these numbers up because I can't remember them anymore, but the green, white, and red. So the red would be Pantone 28,
mm,
and the green would be Pantone 355 or something like that. And it was prescribed in law. So it's
yeah.
in the law that that's the colours it had to be.
Wherever it appeared.
No such thing. So my dad had the thing about this, and when my mum was still alive, I think she was aware of it, but it was like, you silly old fool, you know, just keep that to yourself, you know. And then my mum passed away, and there was no holding my dad back. And it coincided with the formation of the new Scottish Parliament, just at the turn of the millennium. So my
Mm,
dad thought, well, wouldn't this be a great thing, you know, as one of its first things for the Parliament to do was to have some standardisation on our national flag, our national emblem. So he petitioned the Scottish Parliament, the newly formed Scottish Parliament, to say we should have standardisation around this flag.
mhm.
But when the Parliament was formed, it was given specific powers. And there's a great big book, you know, that these are the specific powers. And if the power's not in it, then the Scottish Parliament is not empowered to legislate on it. It goes
Right.
back to Westminster. So it was, Jimmy, come here, go and look up the book and see if you can find anything about the flag in the book.
Mm.
So Jimmy was dispatched to wade his way through the book, and there's nothing there about the flag. So by default, any legislation about the colour of the flag would go to Westminster.
Right.
Now you can probably see the trap that was beginning to form for Westminster. You know, there's a famous or infamous daily newspaper, red top in Scotland called the Daily Record, which is quite nationalistic. And you could imagine the front page of the Daily Record, you know, bloody English MPs get to decide the colour of our flag, you know, be or words to that effect. So Westminster saw the trap it was falling into and said, you need to find a way of pushing this back up to Holyrood to give it its power to do it. Anyway, to cut a long story short, eventually somebody construed a way to legislate on the colour of the flag. And the correct blue in the back of the flag is quite a light blue, and it's Pantone 300 in the Pantone colour palette. So my dad passed away a few years ago, and I thought when we're setting up the company, I thought that'd be a nice little kind of tribute to him to call the company Pantone
Oh,
300.
that's wonderful. What a story. But only quarter of a century ago did that get formalized, ratified?
Yeah.
It's unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah. No, you're still. I mean, if you go to Murrayfield, you can't stop the Chinese manufacturer who churns
Yeah.
out 1,000 saltires, bringing them across in any colour of blue. But at least if you look at any official events, any government
Yeah.
buildings where the saltire fly, there'll be a consistency of colour.
Yeah.
Now, some people might say it's a minor point, but you know, sometimes that symbolism is important.
I think it's vastly important. If you look at every other nation of the world that has a standardized colour on their flag,
Yeah,
you know
yeah,
why
yeah.
shouldn't it be like the case in Scotland?
Absolutely. So hence Pantone 300 properties.
Yeah, brilliant. What a story. Thanks, Doug. No, that's been really interesting, and thank you for coming on and talking about your projects and your journey as well today. There'll be lots of people that'll be inspired by that because we're all at different stages of the journey, and we're all coming into property at different age groups, age categories. So thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Great to talk to you.
So from finance director in the oil and gas industry to successful property developer, you can't get much better than that. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.